Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Type Thursday Book Club, where three professional designers in typography, UX, UI branding review a book together, first independently, then we come online together and we review live our ratings according to 5 criteria. Where's my mouse? Oh no, my mouse isn't working at the moment. Okay, we got this fixed. So hi, we're your host, Thomas Jockin. I'm the founder of Type Thursday for Type Thursday Global. We have Michael Mondragon from Type Thursday Phoenix and Matheo from Type Thursday LA. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
Doing great. Thank you so much.
Doing amazing. I'm excited for today's book.
I know you've been excited for this since we started this book club together, Matheo. So before we get started, what is Type Thursday? Type Thursday is a meeting place for people who love type. We hold in-person meetups around the world, currently in Phoenix and in Los Angeles right now, where people share work in progress projects that use letter forms, whether it be UX, UI, branding, type layout, logo design. If it's using fonts and using letter forms, you're welcome to Type Thursday. So definitely be sure to check out our live events when we have them at Type Thursday in a city near you. So, but this week we have the book club. So when we're not in physical Type Thursday events, we're online together, reading books together. In this case, it's Robert Bringhurst, Elements of Typographic Style, a classic in the pedagogical training of typography. And we're going to review that today, according to 5 criteria, which we agreed to beforehand. So these are clarity of concepts, visual inspiration, practical application, typographic insight, and overall impact. Each of us have read the book privately. We use a 5-star rating system, which we can transition to. And we declare our voting decisions, what ranks we gave it, gave our reasonings, and we talk through whether we agree or disagree with each other. It's a fun time. I'm looking forward to this one. This one's definitely a very important text to my heart as well. So I'm looking forward to working with all you today.
Awesome. We're going to jump right in.
We're going to jump in. Yeah, we're waiting for this to go. Yeah, and the voting order, to mix things up today, Matheo, I'll let you vote first since you were so enthusiastic for this book. Then Michael, then me.
Perfect.
I had a psychic premonition that would be the case.
All right. So let's remove this. Add this.
There we go. Woohoo! So let me jump right in here and say that, Elements of Typographic Style by Robert Bringhurst has been a book that I first read a decade ago. And I didn't know that until I opened the book and saw my notes dated a decade ago, which made me realize, holy smokes, I've been designing for a decade now professionally. Because I picked this book up after I finished my bachelor's degree. And I really felt like they didn't teach me typography enough in school. And they also didn't teach a lot of concepts. There was a huge gap when I graduated between what they're hiring for in the market and what they taught in school, right? So the job market was just extremely different. And I keep hearing that same problem 10 years later with all the people I know now today, the designers. And if you need supplemental learning, then the Elements of Typographic Style by Robert Bringhurst are going to give you the clearest breakdown of any of these typographic concepts that I've ever seen by any design text. That's my hot take on this one. And hence, I'm giving it a solid 5 out of 5 for clarity of concepts. Nobody does it better than Robert Bringhurst as far as explaining what all these little nuances mean. You know, you hear these things or you don't, or you try to read about them, but they're confusing. Robert really takes the time to explain it in full detail, show it to you, and just make it very clear. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm enthusiastic about this book. I mean, this book was made for this book club. I mean, it is definitely, and I'm surprised we didn't do it first, but I'm glad that we didn't do it first because it would be a hard one for any book to keep up with. But the way that I came across this book about 10 years ago as well. And the reason why I did it is because I wanted to take that next leap into typography. And much like when you get a new car, a lot of people don't go and get the little book that talks about the car and actually what the capabilities are and so many different things. I feel like this book is that manual for typography. And for that reason, I too, I can do it right here. I'm giving this a 5 as well. I mean, like I said, it's almost off the page here. I mean, the ideas are precise, they're well articulated. Um, it can be dense, and you know that's the thing that I think that for any new designers, there's a lot to take in, and but it is very digestible as far as learning kind of things that you may have taken for granted in the past, and it'll give it a lot of clarity. So the clarity of concept is off the charts for me.
Yeah, it looks like I am the outlier of the group, which is fine. I think it's what I'm kind of piggyback what Michael said at the very end. It's that obviously, as like I've read this book for like 15 years. I read this in design school in Parsons. I read this. This book is the book for typography training. It is. And I'll talk a lot more about that in the other criterion. But in clarity of concept, when I think of clarity of concept, I mean the thing where you read it and you instantly get it. Now, that's not what this book is. I think it's by design, quite frankly, because this book is it's poetic by nature. And I don't think that's a hindrance about it. But in terms of, we mean clarity is that like you get it instantly, you read it, and then you could just execute on it. That's not what this book's about. Because the thing is talking about is discernment and taste. That's not something you get one shot. No way. That's why you can keep reading this book for 10 years and still get new insights from it. So this is not even a detrimental statement about it. But I think in terms of my understanding of the term concept, clarity of concepts, because of its inherent nature to be a little obtuse and a little opaque in its language, I think especially because it does rely on it uses a lot of other models that if you're not aware of those models, you're going to have a problem understanding what he's saying. I'll give you an example. So he uses art history concepts to talk about the schema, the arrangement of typographic genres, and then uses music theory to talk about composition, like arrangements of the page block and margins and whatnot. If you're aware of those traditions or those models, this is going to make a lot of sense to you. If you're not aware of this, you're very weak in those areas of understanding, not going to go so hot. I say this because even though the music stuff, I only learned much later in life. So now I go back and read Bringhurst's layout sections later. I'm like, oh, this makes perfect sense. But back when I was 20 and 18 and 15, like 20, 21, 25, 18, like around that age when I was reading this book initially, I did not know those things. And those areas, those books, those sections totally blew right by me. Didn't even catch it at all. So, but with that said, does it have it has like this great depth of insight that is so worth going back to over and over again. It's very reminiscent of, like, quite frankly, Platonic dialogues in that way. Platonic dialogues are, quite frankly, they're dense. They're by design dense and obtuse a lot of ways. So so the initial reading is actually not the whole story. You need to go back and read it a couple times. So this is obviously, I'm almost pained to give this rating, but I had to be on, but again, on my understanding of the criteria, and I will make up for this in the other sections. I'm putting this at 3. Because it's that obtuseness and the models is relying on to communicate his ideas. A lot of beginning students will not know. They highly likely will not know. And this will hinder their understanding on the initial run. But with long periods of repetition and exposure and cultivation, you will understand everything he's saying in this text. And it's to your benefit. So that's my take. I'm pushing back on this.
Holy smokes, fam. You heard it here. Thomas is saying that clarity of concepts is mid for the Elements of Typographic Style by Robert Bringhurst. And I totally disagree because I am rock solid at a 5. However, Thomas, you made an absolutely excellent, positively great point, because my first time that I read this book, yeah, a lot of shit went way over my head. Unfortunately, there were just so many things that was just like, what did he just say? And I had to read it over and over again. And it's so dense. Michael made this point as well. Robert, he has a tendency to just be dense. And so as you're reading it, you're kind of like drifting off a little bit and you're like, okay, my brain and eyes both need a break. So as an seasoned expert coming back years later, suddenly things became way clearer. So I totally agree with you, Thomas. For a beginner or an intermediate picking up this book, it is hard. It is hard to sort of interpret this. Like, you're gonna need additional learnings to sort of go along with this.
Yeah, and I sort of think about this too, the clarity of concepts, and we may have to make this distinction because I actually came in with a lot of knowledge on this one. So for me, it was enhancing it, and so I could easily understand it and go ahead with it. But you're right; it's for someone new. This is going to be quite dense, and they're not going to get it. And I was actually going to give it a 4 at that, but I thought because of it was easy for me to have those clarity of concepts, but I did come in with prior knowledge of this. So you're right; it's a tough one, but it is a fair assessment, Thomas. I can say that, and you're right. This kind of evens out in other areas of our criterion.
I will comment. Would we not agree this is expertise bias in the sense that because we have experience, like for us, it's like, of course, by the way, I mean, I've been doing this for 25 years now, 20 years. This book is outstanding. It has such great understanding for us as experts in the field. But I mean, I just remember where I was when I first read this book, bright-eyed, enthusiastic, no, there was so much that was passing right through me. And I think actually, and listen, I deal with this problem with my students. They just want the quick fix. They want the quick, give me the AI summary. Give me the AI algorithm summary. Give me the top 5 list. I mean, the fact that we have to, I find that our discourse kind of makes this more like much more less than that of a listicle kind of approach in terms of, we're using a rating system, a tier system, a ranking system to try to get everyone to talk about our format and our ideas. But everyone wants that kind of smooth, optimized, like, let me just feed me the information and I just get it instantaneously. The way Bringhurst has presented this book is to say no. And in fact, that's what typography is meant to do. My biggest pushback on my students is I tell them, you have to look. You have to really look. You cannot just try to blow through this with some kind of like abstractional idea or optimization, or be a butcher and just chop things away and just try to like be kind of like very blunt in your approach. You need finesse. You need nuance. You need a poet's sensitivity of kind of working with the material, with language and the form. That's the whole idea of this book. Like, by the very nature of this text, you cannot have clarity of concept, at least the way we normally think of clarity, in that sense of optimization, streamline. Yep, got it. Thank you. Check the list. Thank you. And now I get to do my thing. So this critique, even it kind of pains me because I want 5 stars for this book across the board, but I have to be honest, just based on the tension of the concept versus what this book is trying to teach you and what type is actually about. It's not going to inherently be clarity like the normal reading, but I think all of us would generally, I feel like I can speak for all of us to say it's worth the read. You got to do it. You want to get good at type, you've got to do this because it's kind of like in the AI space. It's the only hope in terms of like not just hit by AI slop, but actually have a real intimacy with language and form and visual communication. The text like this needs to shape your sensitivity and your subjectivity about what kind of designer you are, which everything else in the design discourse will teach you to be not, by the way. Right. So I think this is very important counterbalance.
Yeah. Like I said, it's the manual. If you want to be good at typography, this is the manual that you need to go from. Like when I explain this to people, like I say, like, oh, the tilde key, and they look at me like I'm crazy, and I'm like, this is where I learned all this. All those symbols have names, and it levels you up, and this is a skill and a craft. So this is a perfect manual for that.
Well said. I think this is a good point for us to transition, guys. You guys hit it hard.
You're leading the day, Matteo. So please proceed.
Ooh, Mateo's driving. Alrighty, fam. So if you know and have read this book, if you've even looked inside this book, but you didn't read the whole thing, the first thing you're going to notice about Bringhurst is that if you open up to any page, there's almost no visual inspiration. However, I did flag a section in which has a good amount of visual inspiration. But Bringhurst's version of visual inspiration is very different than what you might expect for a design book. It looks like this. Bringhurst is very technical. He's mathematical. He's approaching this from like a music standpoint, a mathematical standpoint, and mathematical perfection. That is the most visual inspiration you get in this book, which is why I ended up rating it the way that I did. Let me get into my Fig Jam and drag this guy in here. And I am ranking him at a solid 2 for visual inspiration. And I would have ranked him lower. I would have. However, I'm giving him a 2 instead of a 1 because if you look through the book, specifically chapter 8, he relates it back to octaves and music theory, which is all based around, math. And he gives you lots of visuals about how to relay these mathematical concepts visually to your design grid and to the book and to the concepts he's teaching you, which I had never seen someone do before. Not quite like the way that Bringhurst does. He does a full breakdown of it. The other place I'm giving him this credit for visual inspiration is he also goes through at the end and gives you a reference text of all the different typefaces, the categorization of these typefaces, where they came from, and just a little bit of historical facts and like how they partner together. So in the back of this book, he does a wonderful job at giving you the best typefaces and sort of just showing you, hey, here's the family, here's what black letter looks like, and here's some historical facts about black letter that can help you decide how to pick your font based on your project and how to pair your fonts based on which visual aesthetics and time periods could pair well together, as well as he gives you the advice of don't pair the two things that don't look like a robot that's paired with a, I don't know, cowboy in the wrong way. It's going to look like they're out of two different worlds, right? So he gives you a ton of great, I think, visual references and aids that help you understand the concepts of typography throughout the book, but in no way are you getting the visual inspiration you got like you did with Martina Floor or Alan Peters' Logos At Last.
Yeah, I think you're right on that one. And let me go down to my Figma. I'm going to give this ranking at a 3 as well. And it's kind of rigid for some modern workflow. So that's one strike against, kind of like a lot of it is print based. But for me, that's great. I mean, I loved seeing a lot of the grid work. And the music part of it is every time I hear that, it harkens me back to Michael Stinson, who talked about the rhythm in typography. So music made a lot of sense in kind of the way it was presented and the way that the notes go on the page up and down, and there's like a flow to it. So that for me was never something that I held against it. But as far as visual inspiration, it's like making better letter forms. When I think of the other books that we did, we talked about like House Industries, Martina Floor, the personality in type, it's probably not there, but the technical part of it, like with the tools that were used for different typefaces, how they were made and where they kind of started, the genesis of it. I loved all that, but visual inspiration, this would probably be not high on the list, although it does have a lot of great technical inspiration as far as structure wise, what your typography should be.
My goodness, man, this is like the most fun book club yet, because for all the reasons you guys are all stating, I placed it at a 5. And here's, I know, this is hilarious. So the reason why, first of all, the book itself is a masterclass of what he talks about. The typesetting, the marginalia, the hierarchy levels, the use of rhythm and pattern in a typographic setting, the clarity of the diagrams to talk through his ideas. The visual catalog of the fonts in the back is a resource within itself, because to get the schematization of the genres, and then actually to get editorial commentary about these fonts, their history, the development, and quite frankly, his opinion to take on the validity of their visual quality. I think that's absolutely visual inspiration. And I absolutely agree, it's very different in terms of it's not flashy like the lettering works we've been studying, because that's not the nature of typography. It's not the nature to be that in general, at least the way Bringhurst talks about it. I think it is the exemplar of what he talks about. Even the subtle detail, what paper choice is using, how the book cover was designed. There actually is there is real sensitivity. You know why I say this? Because let's compare this book to Inside Paragraphs, right? By Cyrus Highsmith. Like it's an order, like no one's looking at Inside Paragraph and going, wow, this is how you typeset a book. This is how you lay out a text. You know, no one's saying that. It's perfectly functional and it's good, but it's not something that orient like how to actually practice typesetting properly in a real deep way. Bringhurst, absolutely. There are so many levels of nuance, sophistication in the typesetting, the hierarchy emphasis, what font pairings are being used. Like this is like, as someone who's been doing this for a long time, whenever I look at Bringhurst just as the book, it's just a masterclass demonstration of what it means to be a great typesetter, knowing typography in the print tradition. So for me, and that again, this is why this book is for the subtle of subtleties of like what it means to be a typographer. Like you should get your job. If you're the kind of person that looks at Bringhurst, this book, and go, wow, this is amazing. Congratulations, you're a type nerd. There's no other way to put it, because only the type nerds are going to look at this book and go, this is the way. Like this is like everything I should be working on. Every Google Doc, right? Every little piece of typography, I should aspire to this level of consideration in my type. So that's why I'm giving this 5, and we got big differences. So this is fun.
I love it.
Bro, you know, leave it to the type designer in the room to rank Bringhurst as visual inspiration at 5, because coming from my graphic design background, my web design background, UI, UX, I'm like, there's no way I'm ranking Robert Bringhurst as a 5. I maybe would have gave him a 4 for all the points that you made, because Thomas, you made some excellent points. Like, look at this book as a master text of craft and typesetting, and it is there, from the heading structure to the use of margins to the way he carved out the page mathematically. And it's like, if you ever hold this book in your hands, the immediate thing you feel right away is how ergonomical it feels, and how like the golden measurements of the universe, just like it fits perfectly into your hands, it opens perfectly, it reads perfectly. Yeah. So like from those points, yes, I would rank it higher. However, we do a blind rating reveal, and we reveal these ratings live, and this is what happens here. This is it. Interesting points, though, Tom.
Yeah, and I feel like you're right. We're also doing it from the heart as well. I think if we would have done this together, and we would have come up with different opinions. So I love the fact that we come into it blind as well. And show the book again, Matteo. I want to show another thing. Like even the way that this is like this is a different book from the get-go. The way that it's it's more vertical, and it's even that part of it is I would think inspiration as well, but I didn't even consider that. I was like, yeah.
I meant to say this. I forgot to say it in my little speech of my rating, but Matteo, go back to put the camera back to Matteo. We put the book up. Like the very fact that Bringhurst had to fight the publisher to allow him to do a non-normal, like a regulated format. That's this is not a normal 6x9, or letter size. Like, no, he demonstrates what he says. I tell my students, don't just do the default. Don't just do the default trim size. That's a design choice. You're setting the musical cadence, concordance of everything else that happens inside by what trim size you choose. Like that is the fact that that's a design decision. That's the good stuff. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
that's the kind of stuff as a typographer. You get your rocks, you get your jock, you get your pants rocked just to see that. It's just like, yes, that's the kind of consideration you need to think about. Anyways, and then also just like that, look at that. I was just lecturing with my students about counterbalance on the cover. There's really subtle gestalt principles. It's a very basic cover. Listen, typographers are notorious for being very boring, but the very fact that look at this little move Look at that outdent of the italicization of the article of, right? For example, look at the counterbalance of the E, right? Put to the right side. So now you have a counterbalance between the title and the E in the bottom. Okay, this is the kind of stuff I just go nuts about because I'm like, yes, this is the good stuff. This is
that was 100% a fight, and it's probably the reason why I thought it was like a car manual, like it would fit in the glove box.
Yeah,
I didn't even consider that. That's awesome.
I mean, I love that. Like every time I hold it in my hand, it's just like it's the perfect size for your palm, and this is so well designed from a type designer perspective. Absolutely. And the cover, I was like, why is this cover so boring? But it took me years to appreciate exactly what you just pointed out, Thomas. I was like, wait, there's actually a lot of like nuance here that you now appreciate it. But yeah, this was good.
Okay.
Woo!
I've screamed enough. My great passion. Matheo, please continue.
Let's go, fam. So we are on the section for practical application, and this means usefulness for teaching for professional practice, or applying it to your professional practice as a designer. And if you're to pick this book up and read it front to cover, for me, I'm going to give it on practical application a solid, for me, I'm going to say 4. And the reason that I'm going to say 4 is because I'm a very visual person and I need lots of step-by-step and like, I don't know, what do you say? This like breaking things down into a workshop form or like an activity in order to be able to practically apply the principles, or even just be like, okay, now here's what I taught you, which it gives clear concepts right out the door. Now here's where you apply it to, and sort of like showing more examples of that. I think the book would have been way longer if he had taken the time to do all that. And I don't think that's the way he wanted to approach this. He really wanted to approach it as a timeless reference text. And so he doesn't reference software throughout the whole book, which makes this book stand the test of time. It's been 10 years since I first read it, and it's just as relevant today, if not even more relevant now. And there's just so much wisdom inside this book that you can practically apply to all of your design practice. It's tough though. It's tough. And if you're a new or intermediate in your career, you really need someone like I had, like Michael Stinson, who I didn't meet Michael Stinson or Rachel Elnar until I started coming to Type Thursday events. And then I got invited to Type Ed to learn from them. And that's where all these principles that I had learned from the book started to come to the surface and make more sense for me. It really took somebody in person to be able to guide me, not just the book. The book was extremely helpful, but to get that into my design practice, I needed a mentor and some in-person learning. And that's what I felt like Michael Stinson did. Like he brought it to typography to life in a fun way to learn. So that's my breakdown on practical application here.
Yeah, I like that. And I too am going to give it, we're thinking a lot alike here, Matheo. I'm also going to give it a 4 as well. And you know, it's highly applicable, but it's not a quick win book. So you're right. Like for instance, I think to myself, if I were to give this to my students, they would look at it and probably not know how to use it properly. But over time, and referring back to it as we've talked about before, using it in that term as like, oh, that's what that symbol is used for. That's how you use, this format. You talked about not referring to software, which is actually a very interesting perspective, which I didn't think about. But they do reference Adobe because a lot of the Adobe people, they had all the fonts and stuff like that for Adobe at the beginning. That's the only time I've seen that mentioned. But I do like this, and I think the practical application, again, for a professional is outstanding, but for someone who wants to get better at typography, I think it's essential.
Yeah, I think for me, so here's my deal. So I think I agree with everybody saying, listen, This book by yourself, you're not like, here's the trade-off. If you apply the ideas of this book, you will be a better designer, like regardless of your discipline, technology, or context. If you take the time with the text. Here's the issue though. Beginners are going to absolutely need a seasoned mentor or an instructor to translate the ideas of the book into application. So that's where it's a struggle in the sense that, actually, it's really interesting. I'm talking out loud. The good thing I did my reading before I got swayed by you guys. But the general note is, I think in terms of like, because of its universality of statement, which is interesting because you would think like, oh, the web doesn't have this issue. Like you can't use this for the web. You can. I think the principles in this book absolutely apply. In fact, I remember there's someone, I don't know if he ever completed the project, who translated Bringhurst's Elements of Typographic Style for the web. This is from the 2010s. I remember this. He was not nearly as good as Bringhurst in terms of application, but in terms of actually laying it out and using it on the web, like the ideas. But the very fact that he made the attempt is showing that it could be used. It just hasn't been followed through. So I think for those reasons, because the core ideas are solid and more important, the kind of quality of mindset. I think for me, the biggest practical application about this book is to be the kind of designer who has that poetic consideration in how they work, where they're thinking about things. What's the relation with my margins to my text block? What is the typographic choice doing for the contrast and the quality of the tone of voice being done? How do I have sequence managed in a way to give different hierarchy and strength to the text to tell the story and the intentional structure inside the text, as well as authorial meaning significance? Like all that nuance, that for me is the practical application of this text, not the fact of like how you set your type in picas versus reams, for example. Like, I don't think that's really, for me, my interpretation of what the practical application of this book is. But even with those caveats, like it will take either time or mentorship to get the real gems out of this book. I do think they're there. So for those reasons, I gave it a 5.
Oh, nice.
Ooh. I do remember this article where someone on the web did try to translate Bringhurst to web design and UI design, and I was so happy when I saw that. You're absolutely correct. It was very short compared to Robert Bringhurst's extensive dive on all of this, but at least it was an attempt, and I thought it was very great to see. The sad part is, for a long time on the web, CSS hasn't given us a whole lot of tools to adjust the typography. And the tools that they gave us were kind of like developer speak and think around typography. And then eventually, I think more designers got into the space and they informed the developers, things of we've learned from Gutenberg Press and something like WordPress, then named its new launch of its entire WYSIWYG builder with the Gutenberg Press idea. And that is like democratizing the web and then giving the people the ability to build blocks and assemble information very quickly and rapidly and sort of componently. So you can assemble a web page out of components very quickly, just the way that Gutenberg had assembled typography and pages with blocks of text. So it's a really cool idea. And I think things get richer. Technology gets better when the two schools of thought can meet and then start to learn from each other, designers and developers and engineers. And then there's this third school of thought of like typographers who are this super niche, right? Like an extra nerd. The way that Bringhurst is so poetic and the way that he kind of tells this poetic story while also educating you and with humor. There's some points when he throws in some very comical humor to that. And I love that. I love like what you said about it. He even makes you consider the negative space in the margins, as well as the negative space between the headings, as well as the space between every element, how that's proportional. And then he shows you, like, this book is a masterclass example on it. Like, you can, once you learn these concepts, you can look at the book and start dissecting and realizing, oh wow, this is it. This is what something looks like when it's mathematically proportionate to one another. It's musical, it's rhythmical, it jumps off the page.
Yeah, and I also think it encouraged designers to like care about the details that most people would ignore. And I think that's why we're doing this, is because we care passionately about, you know,
Mhm.
why this matters. And, you know, and it is something that people would go like, why do people care about this? Especially in the digital age where it's like on every device, this could look different. So it's like, you know, like it's impossible to keep up with, but
Mm.
that's why I love this book even more because it is, you know, super niche, but I also feel like it's something that I care passionately about and I want to get better at. And there's no way that I'll get as good as I ever want to be with typography, but this will get me close.
Yeah. I think a big note is that, I mean, that's the thing. There has been a lot more development in CSS in the last, I would say 5 years, especially, where the sophistication now is so much higher than it used to be for the web and type, quite frankly. The fact that you can even, it used to be very difficult to even specify the first line of a paragraph. Like that now is just one piece of code, like one little thing in your CSS qualifier in your code. And then boom, you can specify that, for example. So there's a lot more, there's so much more nuance and basically this articulation. Like that's always been the problem with the web in the past, is that it was so expensive and costly to be particular in your specifications. So just on the code side, and even if you did do it, the problem was, as was hinted at by Michael, it could, if you had different browsers to shoot different browsers, different devices, it would blow it up. So if you were too particular, it was a liability because you weren't able to respond to the conditions of different platforms and browsers and mediums. But there's been a lot more development and a lot more allowing of robustness while having flexibility. So I think we're long overdue for a reconsideration of typography with CSS that brings Bringhurst's ideas back, like really articulates Bringhurst's ideas and develops them further. Because I think the big note is that tension and design of control specificity versus the need to go with the DAO, right? The flow of how the web responds and bends and arcs, like almost like wood. Wood does that. Like it has to compress and expand according to the environment it's in, right? Design typography has to do the same thing. So it's not a liability of this book. It's just simply to say there's the new dimensions of quality of design. I really have not seen yet the book to talk about those aspects of it. But this book is almost like the next extension on what Bringhurst is talking about, is that nuance point that you guys are bringing up. So this is not a liability of Bringhurst. It's just simply saying that this is the groundwork to even start having a discussion of what does that mean on the web.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean, as we go forward too, what does that mean on extended reality, virtual reality, blended with augmented reality, and all these interfaces that will extend the way we look at the reality around us, right? So all these rules that we're learning about relationship, Gestalt principles, typography, spacing, mathematical proportions, I think all that still remains applicable. So jumping into typographic insights, the depth of typographic thinking, if applicable. I could lie and say that there's no application of typographic insights in here at all. However, that'd be a blatant lie and a good April Fool's joke, because Robert Bringhurst's book is the typographic, I would say, type Bible. It has earned that title, and this is like off the charts right here. Typographic insights from the book itself. You can look at it as a case study and you can dissect the way that he's typeset the book and learn from his heading structure layout and his spacing and the mathematical proportions. You can also read and just dive in. And also you can sample this. Someone in the chat mentioned, Lorem Ipsum was his name. He said, I've always looked at this book as a reference text. Like you open it up and reference it. You don't read it in full. But you can read it in full, or you can reference. Either way, this book is extremely useful, and you're going to learn so much typographic insight. And he has this whole section in the back where he covers all the defined terms in a nice way as well. So I would say this is the de facto book where you're going to get all the typographic insight you need.
Yeah, I don't know how we can even rank this book anything but a 5. This is when I first got into wanting to be a better, working with typography or being around it or understanding it. making my typography and my branding, UX, all of that, want to make it better. This is the first book that anybody brought up, and it came up multiple times. I'm glad to have this in my collection because I refer back to it quite a bit. But few books can even match the information in here. And I think that that's one of the important things that kind of makes this stand out as well. You know, it explains like the structure, the rhythm, but also the philosophy of typography. And I don't think any book could even come close to it. I mean, I haven't heard of one yet, and this is and I think that that's why we're doing this, because we're also exposed to other things that we may not have been into, but this one's always been on my radar as far as typography goes.
How can I cannot contest anything that's being said. I mean, here we'll see if we show the drama. I mean, this is clearly a 5. There's no debate about that. Look, this book is an entire typographic education in one book. Like, if you cannot get a mentor, and you cannot get to a design, like, and that's the thing too. It's not even like you go to, like, this is the ideal wish for a typography class. If you had your typography class to be this articulation of historical genealogy, typographic technology and the history and development of it, and poetic sensibility of language blended together into one class, this book is like the ideal of that. That's the wish. Now, as Matteo hinted at, does that ever happen in typography classes? Absolutely not. It doesn't happen. And there's lots of reasons for that. It's extremely difficult to enact. I think even the best design programs in the world can maybe get to this. It takes usually multiple typography classes of at least 3 to even start getting to what Bringhurst is trying to communicate in this text. That's how dense this text is. It's basically like 3 or 4 typography classes compressed into one book. It's crazy. So as a result, it's an encounter that's almost impossible to actually experience in education, at least from what I've seen and talk to colleagues about. But it's always our wish. If I feel any educator who's trained typography really deeply wishes they could do a class around this book. That's how good this book is in terms of your typographic insights. You'll get everything you need from this book. So for that reason, it's a 5 without even a question because of that. Yeah. Is there anything I want to say? Because I feel like the big question is that this book is so good, and everybody agrees unanimously. This book is that good in terms of like a textbook for typography. Like, if you're gonna get like a good textbook to get you like everything you're gonna need about type, lay at typography especially. Like, why are public schools not doing this? I think that's actually the more interesting question I have in my mind.
That's interesting. That's a really good question. I'll tell you why, maybe because I don't even think they're confident in what they know about typography. So this type of book may not even it may be intimidating to them as well. That's what I'm finding. Because I ask all the time. I'm saying, like, why are there not more typography classes? Why are they being phased out? And I just don't think that people think that there's a value in it, or they don't know about it. And I think it's also a combination of those two things.
I think Michael hit the nail on the head. And we even have someone in the chat 2 steps away. Thank you for joining us. He found us by searching the book title and popped in to learn more, because he's been or they have been debating whether or not to purchase this book. It sounds like they're a beginner in their career and they weren't sure if this was going to be helpful. I would say this book is worth its weight in gold. It's worth its weight. It's worth every penny that you pay for this book. You could be like me, and when I was a student, I bought it used. I bought it secondhand. I got any edition I could get my hands on. It's not the latest edition, but close enough. And it served me well. It served me really, really well. I've gotten my money's worth out of this book time and time again, because I always go back to it. And in school, in curriculum, it should be there. It needs to be there. This is a staple in the design industry that without this, you lack the foundation. And I can tell you, my school didn't teach this in the curriculum. It was from a friend of mine who was attending, I believe, ASU master program in design, graphic design. and he was like, hey, they threw this book at us, and oh my god, I hate it. But it's so good. Like, I hate it, but it's so like, it's actually opening my mind. And so I eventually picked it up, and I kept hearing about it from other people, and I was like, you know what, I gotta, my typographies, I knew it wasn't good out of school, so I was like, I need to, learn this better. And so I picked it up, and I fell in love. It's worth it, and it should be in every curriculum. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
I have nothing to say to that. So let's move on down to the last one. Overall impact. I kind of have a feeling what everybody's going to do. I think I know what everybody's going to do. I'll be very surprised if it goes otherwise. But Matheo, please, let's close out on this.
Alrighty, fam. So I highlighted a section here on page 143. He opens chapter 8, and he says, a book is a flexible mirror of the mind and the body. Its overall size and proportions, the color and texture of the paper, the sound it makes as pages turn, and the smell of the paper, adhesive and ink, all blend with the size and form and placement of the type to reveal a little about the world in which it was made. If the book appears to be only a paper machine produced at their own convenience by other machines, only machines will want to read it. So for me, I highlighted that right now because that's what we're facing. And this has never been more true in the age of AI, where machines are making agentically with other machines and reproducing AI schlop, things that are hyper perfect, and people are tuning out. The more perfect something is, the more someone's tuning out. And man, it's going, that marketing is now, people are blind. They're ad blind, marketing blind. Mute the advertisement, skip the ad, see the thing in front of them, choose to just zone out. And if something's human made and messy or proportional and has the right figures, suddenly it's engaging. Suddenly it's far more interesting. And so handmade, human made, handcrafted is the way of the future. The value of humanity and things made by your two hands just increased because machine making and AI producing and content creating it's commodity now. You can click of a button, have something made. Does it engage? No. And the first time I ever read this book, it changed the way I design. It changed the way I think about design and typography, and it impacted my entire career. Hence, I'm putting overall impact and lasting relevance and in the influence on the design field, solid 5, like off the charts. If we could go off the charts here. So, yeah.
Oh, that's going to be a tough one to follow up. Everything that you just said is awesome. And it does make me think about kind of like the future, because remember, AI has all this information out there, right? And it still makes what it makes. Eventually it'll get better and all that. But I do feel like this is as human as a profession, as a skill as you can get. I mean, typography has been around for centuries. And for me, I'm also going to give it a 5. And it's, again, I'm biased because I love typography, but this made me love it even more and made me also kind of reshape how I even look at typography. And that says something, because I'm all about breaking typography, about making it kind of bold and again, I the thing that got me excited about design and taking chances and the punk rock approach of it was David Carson, who this book was not made for David Carson. All right. But you have to know the rules to break the rules. But it sets the standard that I think that most designers kind of need to get to if they really want to break the rules and really make an impact in their designs, in what they're putting out there, but also knowing how to make something legible, how to make it the right marks, all of that. And again, we're 3 professionals, and we could not put over this book more. I think that speaks volumes for this book as well.
Matteo, that quote you just pulled, actually, I remember that reading it. And I was like, this book is prophetic to our time. The question of what does it mean to be human, right? It's basically being brought to our attention with this book. So actually, ironically, typography, the way Bringhurst presents typography to you with this book, it asks a serious question: what does it mean to be a human? Because not only is that, because speech now has been automated, right? So now discourse and speech and language can all just be splatted out, right? But that sensitivity to the poetic, right? Literally to talk about how paper, glue, ink, structure, all these things is what makes us human. That sensitivity to those poetic qualities about it. That is very much what this book is trying to cultivate on us. So if you're serious about typography, is that kind of like, what does it mean to be human? Right? Which ideally will have economic value, because as Matteo said, everything's becoming slop, where it's just smoothed out sameness. So you actually lose economic metrics, because then you got to just be louder and faster and quicker to try to convert currency. And that's unsustainable long term. A different mode is going to be required in some way. Typography is that soul. It is that soul. The typography that Bringhurst is presenting to you is that. And even the arguments of the counterfactuals of like the Carsons, which I was inspired by too, by the way. I was immensely inspired by Carson. But Carson still had soul. You can even see the way he talks about it. He is talking about that. You can tell there's this kind of, the disposition of a typographer is this person who's playing with language as a material. Language is material for a typographer. And they're working on a canvas, and then they're working with it. Just different qualities and temperaments about it. And Bringhurst says it. You can break all these rules, but you're still responding to it. You know? So, and I think the essential principle that the Carsons of the world and the Bringhursts of the world are all talking about is that soul of language being revealed and being manifest in the making, in the manifestation, in the generation of the work. This is the kind of thing you need to take your time with this text. You got to take your time with this text. You come to this book bit by bit. You can come as a reference guide. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that resource in that way. But also, you should just read it. I think it's almost like you should do like a yearly break. Like every year, you just take a break. You know, stop your designing for a bit. Take a weekend off. Just read the text and just chew on it, and let the guidance of the author bit by bit internalize that sensitivity of that kind of being a temperament, a disposition that eventually becomes your own unique voice, because you're going to have to internalize to Bringhurst differently. Both because the circumstances of your design is different, technology you're using, the constraints you're responding to, all of them are going to be different than Bringhurst. But nevertheless, you have to internalize. That's what makes your voice, typographic voice, is going to be unique. Typographic voice is very much like the cultivation of your personality. It takes time. It doesn't happen in 1 year, in one semester. You know, a good typographic voice is going to take about 5 to 10 years to cultivate, to get started, to start showing up, to be something substantial. And I think that's what makes it very beautiful. You know, it's kind of like this really deep sense of commitment and awareness. And that's why this text is not just like a go-to of like how to think about type. It's how to be a typographer. What does it mean to be a typographer? I think this book is, and it may seem dramatic to talk about it this way, but the bit that by what Matteo quoted, it's just a little sample of what this book is trying to gesture at with you. And if you take that seriously, I think you're a better human being. And I think that's actually a much higher standard than just a technical know-how or just here's the cool thing to do. So much better than that. So highest standard, highest ranking. Obviously, I should need to get in there and put my face in now. Excuse me. And there you go.
Awesome. Great stuff. Great explanation as well.
I don't think we do anything else to say, because we all agree. So it's not as fun as the beginning where we had some massive disagreements, which was super fun.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some beautiful insights in this. Never did I think I'd pick up a graphic design book of any kind, or a typography book especially, and start thinking about the human condition, what it means to be human, what it means to communicate thought, and the power of words and the text. And that's what Robert Bringhurst does. He takes a poetic approach to examining the human condition and the power that comes with typography, to the power to move people, the power to communicate, the power to evoke emotion. And he says that the type designer's job serves both sides, and to use type for good or for evil. Fortunately, it's not your job. You're giving those words to the world, and it's quite an interesting position for him to take. There's no one side or the other, but he does it in such an inspiring way. Yeah. This book has opened my mind more than any other book, so that's why I say it is worth it. The time investment, the money investment, it's worth it having a copy.
100%.
I got nothing else to say. On that note, shall we move over to our wild card round? I
Yeah.
wonder what we're going to get this time. I'm curious.
Give us a new one.
For real. Let me
You know how this goes.
Shout out to all the people in the chat. Thank you, Lorique, for showing up. Andrea, 2 steps away, for finding us today, literally today, finding us and just jumping right in. Thank you, Pam. I guess a Lorem Ipsum in there. Yeah, it's been great.
All right. Pull it up. And here we go.
Let's see what we get.
Alrighty. What
Something new. Hooray.
What one design tool or piece of software pairs best with this book? Oh, right off the top, InDesign. There's probably no better software that will allow you the control over your typesetting than InDesign. You don't get it through HTML and CSS on the web. The ability to have that much control, you don't get it through Figma. I've not seen Figma adopt enough typography yet, unfortunately, as good as it is. Even Illustrator, which a lot of folks will use, but if you're trying to typeset paragraph text like this, multiple pages, Illustrator just fucking flops and dies on itself. It's god awful. Do not type paragraph body copy with Illustrator. And if you try to do any kind of type work in Photoshop, it's a headache. It's a nightmare. That thing will just crap its pants and explode and crash all over. But InDesign, it's probably the best tool to pair with this book. Yeah.
I don't think that there's any debate here. InDesign for sure. I remember, and I probably told this story before, but it bears repeating. I remember when I was taking the type ed classes at the beginning, and I thought that I was a hotshot graphic designer. I knew everything there was about InDesign, and I saw Michael Stinson show me just even like character styles, paragraph styles, all of the things that you could do, grep, all of the things typography related. And it got me thinking, I'm like, I can't imagine the way that I would approach. Like if somebody said like, oh, we want to, typeset a book. Like I wouldn't even have considered InDesign. I would have been like, oh, I'll just do it all in Illustrator or I not that I would do it in Photoshop, but I was like, I wouldn't even considered it. And now I'm just like, I can't consider anything but InDesign for a lot of projects just because of the typography aspect of it. And when I teach this to my students as well, I go, trust me when I tell you, you cannot do this in any other Adobe program with typography. So I love that element of this and laying it out and making typography the most it can be. And InDesign is easily the leader in that.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I thought Mike were going to be fun and just say, oh, Quark. We're going to do some Quark Express. We're going to go.
I was waiting for that. Yeah.
I know. Because that's the point. It's like, it's funny, even though we have, what is there? Oh, God. The competitor to Adobe, the
Figma or Affinity.
Affinity,
Canva?
right? Yeah, Canva, Affinity, exactly. None of them are even coming close to touching InDesign. It's super niche, I get it, but it's the point. It's just like too much firepower. It's just like, the thought of like teaching a typography class not in InDesign is absurd. It doesn't make any sense. I do think there's a tension. I do wish. And I'm still standing on it. I think CSS is getting robust enough that you can teach Bringhurst with CSS. You can do it. It's just that it's just
now
difficult.
you can.
I think go on. Sorry, Matteo.
You know what you need, and I learned this through working with a startup company when I was like digging into documentation and researching and trying to understand why like every developer would design a page, a UI, an interface, and they would all design it fucking differently, and the code was all written differently. So I was going in and reading the documentation for how it was built. I ended up reading about JavaScript, React, Bootstrap, and Sass and Less. So Sass and Less are the extensions that extend the CSS language into a more programmatic, like feature rich language so that you can use variables. Now, if you use variables, you can approach all these things that Bringhurst talks about, like the M space and the N dash, because what are those? Those are variables to the width of the M inside the font. And so now you can actually write that in using Sass or Less and variable logic and make sure the spacing and rhythm of your pages and flows and M's and Rems all follow this modular model, right? And scalable, flexible model. So it's it's becoming more powerful.
Yeah, Michael, I don't know if you have any more thoughts before we move on.
No, I mean, I was trying to think of it because I think of like Microsoft and like Word and all this other like, it just doesn't, it's not as robust. InDesign is it. And you're right. And it's been a while. And actually like CSS is actually why I got out of developing, because I started having to learn all that code. And maybe it's time to revisit that, because I feel like well, it used to be separate. It used to be the UX and UI designer, and then the coder. You work with, the people that implemented it. Now they want those together. So it actually is being thrust upon us. So maybe revisiting all that CSS, if it is getting that robust, is something that I should definitely consider.
Well, now the bastards have fired everyone and tried to have AI do it, and AI keeps fucking it up. So there's that as well.
which is interesting, by the way, because like, as just a side note, I don't know if you guys ever thought about pretext. This is a new library being developed that actually like re-renders the text engine, like it's a new text engine for the browser that's allowing for like way more optimal output of text and reflow that doesn't like destroy. Basically, long story short, it's not as demanding of memory processing time on the browser, so you can do much more sophisticated techniques or manipulations of text on screens. So, and there's people doing really crazy creative interplay, like objects of it. It's very like 2000s, like the Winamps. You know, Winamp, like the Winamp skins. It's giving a lot of that energy of like this explosion in creativity. I think we're due for that's thing. That's like, and that was that was built from the ground from AI. Like that was awesome. Like that's a cool use of AI.
That's
because it was basically. It'd be too difficult and laborious any human to do that process to figure it out. So they just threw a bunch of AI agents against it, and they came up with a whole rendering engine that now people are grabbing and now doing all their creativity and play with.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And that's when I saw the dragon. If you've seen it on online on socials, there's the page text and a dragon's floating through, and the text is rearranging itself around the dragon. It looks so badass. I wanted to kind of go back to something that Michael was talking about, that as you were telling your students, in InDesign, you will find there is no other Adobe software that gives you as much control, as many powerful tools as the tools inside of InDesign, like paragraph styles, character styles, global regular expressions, grab and replace text. It's amazing, and it changes the way you work, and it makes your workflow better and faster when you understand those concepts and you start applying them, because you can quickly update everything. I thought, like, hot take for Adobe, y'all are floundering in the market out here. We're losing out to your competitors. If you could take the power of InDesign and all of those and bring that, like, allow InDesign to come into all these other tools and allow us to use this in other ecosystems, now boom, you would empower people like crazy.
The problem, Matteo, is that because Adobe acquired a lot of their software, they have its legacy.
Right.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the rub everyone forgets. A lot of their software was acquired. InDesign is not from Adobe, technically. I remember I think it was like, I think it was PageMaker.
or PageMaker?
No, it wasn't Quark. It was PageMaker. I think it was Atlas PageMaker.
Mm-hmm.
Don't quote me on that. I'm a little fuzzy on that history, but basically a lot of their software was acquired. It wasn't, they didn't build from the ground up. And because they're actually, as you noted, developers do code differently. They may not interpolate between one to another. This is why the glyph palette took, 10 years to show up in Photoshop? Like there was a huge petition.
Yeah.
It was a huge, and that's the reason why it took forever, because it was non-interpretable software. Their infrastructure was totally different. So it was not an easy translation of the glyph palette from InDesign and even Illustrator to get it into Photoshop.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest liability of Adobe, is that they have this legacy software of 30 years that they got to now bootleg into. They got to like so much Christmas light tangle up everything to make them work. So yeah, variables and other aspects of like the InDesign will be outstanding in the other software, but
yeah,
that's in my opinion. That seems to be the technical limitation. Why
that would change the game? You know, like give us the ability to like have that power and that control over typography and layout and set styles. Because even in the web, you have to write like CSS, cascading style sheets. You are defining styles that will apply to heading 1, heading 2, body copy, footer. If you write it once, you can apply it everywhere. Take that same idea and bring that to these other softwares. Like whichever software does that first, because there's a fucking arms race in the software world right now between everybody popping off with new apps and new software launches and AI and people making stuff with AI. The first person to give us the amount of power that InDesign has in typography and bring that to UI design, bring that to web design, bring that to app design, product design, you win. You win the software game. We're giving you the keys right here. Thank you, Bringhurst.
But you know who I think that should be listening to you is Figma.
Yeah. Yep. And right now Figma's down too.
Yeah, and they're trying. I mean, they to their credit, they got variable fonts in before Adobe did in some of their software. It was only I think it was only last year Adobe finally in After Effects got variable fonts in, which is crazy in my opinion. It took them that long to get variable font support. They might beat them out by a couple of years, but we're getting somewhere, but not nearly the level you're talking about, Matteo. That more systematic, algorithmic, like actually algorithmic approach to design, right? Of style, basically applying like one-to-many systems. Who would have thunked it? Anyway, so hot takes for today. All right. So with that said, gentlemen, as I predicted, great show, over an hour long, as I expected was going to happen today. So the book club continues. We got another classic text, Grid Systems and Graphic Design by Brockman. That is next week. And then we got in-person Type Thursday events. And then we're working through Thinking with Type, how to be a graphic designer without losing your soul, and then Ruined by Design. So we got a big, broad range of books coming through the next 5 weeks. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And subscribe, obviously, if you want to keep in touch with us and the book club. We're on YouTube at Type Thursday Global. And as I said, in 2 weeks, we got Type Thursday LA happening in April. Matteo, what's going on in Type Thursday LA?
Oh, this month is one of the best events that we have put together. My team has come together working collaboratively to do this graphic design series that you see launched across Type Thursday LA on Instagram and all of our other social media platforms. So if you're seeing this graffiti art style and you're liking this is a collaboration of multiple designers coming together. A local graffiti artist, Jorge Gomez, who's there in the bottom left, is worked with us and created these hand sketched tags. We've worked in the Type Thursday global brand guides. Rachel Fujita, the designer and the ideas behind bringing graffiti artists to LA in the culture. We're launching the series right now through our so you're talking about LA artists and art and culture around LA, and we've got the event where 3 presenters show work and the audience, you get to give feedback live, and it'll be there at HMCT Art Center. Thanks to our friends at HMCT. So join us April 30th. You have 1 day, you have 24 hours to lock in your $10 tickets and save $20. Why are you waiting? Go get your tickets now. You'll save $20. Get them at 10. And what other event can you go to in LA or in any city where you pay $10 and you get pizza, food, drinks, cookies, snacks, networking, and inspiration all in one? We'll see you there.
I think
Special
also, isn't
guest?
it, a little bird told me someone is special guest is coming also for this Type Thursday.
I'm coming just for the
Hello.
pizza.
A little owl.
Yes. Yes. I'm looking forward to being there on April 30th. And again, I'm going to see a whole bunch of old friends. And I was just talking to someone just this week where I said that I've had friends, I think, for almost 10 years now, like at least 9 from going to Type Thursday events. So I'm looking forward to seeing all my friends at Type Thursday. So yes, can't wait.
It's going to be a great time. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week for Type Thursday Book Club. Fantastic night, everybody. Get on, have a great time, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for
Thank you,
joining.
everybody.